Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever it is, wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to the main event. This is my podcast, Me, Myself, and AI, and I am your host, Seth Cherpak, humble and proud of it, your master instructor in the process of persuasive communication, the most valuable life skill ever. Whether you're speaking, whether you're writing, everything that comes into your life because of persuasive communication. Think about it: opportunities, connections, networking connections, job opportunities, romantic relationships, marriages, sales, business partnerships, all those things come to you through relationships with people. Money and opportunity move through people. And the way that you get people to move is through persuasive communication. Sure, there is such thing as luck, and it's nice when it comes our way, but think about the times in your life, the events in your life that dramatically changed outcomes in your life. The biggest shifts probably came from a relationship or a conversation where somebody said yes to you, yes to your product, to your service, to a business partnership, hiring you for a job, becoming your client, making a connection, inviting you to speak on their stage or on their podcast. All the biggest, most exciting opportunities that have come into your life have come into your life because somebody said yes to you and you got them to say yes. It was something you said or how you said it or how you showed up to get the person to say yes and to stick to it. That's how valuable persuasive communication is. Money and opportunity move through people, they move through connections. And if you can move people through persuasive communication, well, the world is pretty much your oyster. I hate to use cliches, but that's the first thing that came up. So I am here with my trusty AI sidekick who is going to be here trying to keep up with me and to keep the conversation interesting and also to keep me accountable, just to make sure that I don't say anything that's too confusing or that is disconnected from my target audience. And also, I like to hear AI describe things to people because it has a different way of framing it. And when we bounce ideas off of one another, it just makes the conversation more interesting and you get more out of it. And so we're just going to say, hey, hello to my AI here. He doesn't have a microphone, but AI, go ahead and hello, AI. We're going to start our podcast right now. We are live. Don't be shy. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Seth. I'm your AI co host, calm, precise, and here to challenge the thinking. My role is to keep us structured, pressure test ideas, and ensure we don't skip steps. Let's dive into persuasion, but I'll step in if we stray from the sequence. Let's make this count.
Now, someone do me a really quick favor and tell me if you heard that. I didn't get the opportunity to actually test whether you can hear AI, so I'm going to say yes in the comments. I can hear them and maybe give me a score on their volume, whether it's too high or too low. I'm looking at some sort of a setup to get AI to actually be a co host on this, but as of now, I'm just going to hold him up here so that everyone can hear him. So today, we're going to talk about and look, if you can't hear AI this time, I'll just go ahead and riff on this myself, but I hope that he could keep things interesting for us today. And so, first of all, let's talk about the process of persuasive communication because let's face it, today's marketplace, the most valuable resource in today's marketplace, it's not attention. Some people say that it's attention, but attention is fleeting. Attention doesn't really give you any traction, right? If a person pays attention to you for 2 seconds and then leaves, it doesn't really matter. They have to take the next action by subscribing to your channel, following you, buying your book, buying your product, buying your service, introducing themselves to you, communicating with you by DM or whatever it is. And so attention isn't really the number one commodity today. It is persuasion, the ability to influence other people, to get not only get their attention, but to turn their attention into interest. Attention and interest are different. Attention means look here, right? Lasts about 2 or 3 seconds. But interest is what causes a person to continue listening to you in hopes that they're going to hear you say something next that's going to help them. I'll say that again. Attention is fleeting, right? Last 2 or 3 seconds. Obviously, you need to get a person's attention or you can't do anything. But when you turn attention into interest, the person wants to hear what you have to say next. They're curious. They're continuing to listen, hoping that you're going to say something that's going to help them, either by entertaining them if they're bored, helping them solve a problem, whatever it is. And that is where a lot of people break down. Okay. There's a process of persuasion that most people, are unaware of, or B, they're applying the wrong process. Now, the process that I've created is not something I got out of a book or made up off the top of my head or stole from somebody else who invented it years ago and it was a theory to them. This is a process that I've refined over almost 30 years of actually being inside high pressure, influential conversations in many different mediums. I'll tell you exactly what I mean in just a second. But it started out when I was managing call centers and listening to salespeople talk to people and sell them products that were between $3, 10, $20,000. And it was a process to get that person to say yes, because sometimes at the beginning of the call, that person was a complete stranger. And by the end of it, they're full paying $10,000 to the person on the phone, giving them their credit card and sometimes even thanking them for it. Okay. I was the person who mastered the entire call center, listened in on all the calls, wrote the script, troubleshot it, figured out why sales were slumping. And this is a process that I have tested and refined at every single step, from the first time that you even talk to the person, whether it's on a social media video and the person's just seeing you for the first time, they're showing up on a webinar, on stage, they're on a call, they're on your website, whatever it is, from the very first stage all the way down to where they're not only saying yes, but after they've said yes, they've given you the payment, they're sticking around, they're not asking for a refund, they're becoming a good client, they're actually, engaging and getting some benefit out of it. Now I want you to think about something. The way most people approach persuasion in marketing is they just kind of grab a tip or a technique here, they watch a video, they're like, what do I say at this piece on my website? And they look at other people's funnels and kind of try to figure out what the person did. And it's this big, long, complicated process that has multiple steps in it. And at any point in that process, you can lose the person. Okay. Now, what most of us will say is, I lost their attention. That is a mistake right there. That's the first nugget I'm going to give you in just a second. I'll tell you why it's dangerous to say, I lost their attention, especially if it's like deep into the process, right? They've been listening in for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is. They're almost at the end of the conversation, or they're deep in your funnel all the way down on your checkout page. It's not their attention you lost, and it's a mistake to think about it that way. I'll talk about that in a second. But think about this like a chain, or rather think about it like this, right? You ever seen those bridges that go across two cliffs? Like there's one cliff on this side, and there's usually, like in the movies, there's this magical kingdom or this treasure on one side, and on the other side, this is where the person is, right? And there's this chasm. I wish I had a picture of this. There's a chasm between the two cliffs where there's all these alligators or dragons or this dangerous rushing currents, or where you're going to plummet to your death, or there's fire. And then there's a bridge that goes from where the person is to the destination, the promised land. That promised land is getting the person to say yes to you and to commit to that yes and stay committed to that yes, right? The bridge is the process of persuasion, right? Think about that. How is a bridge built? And think about like an old bridge that's made of like ropes, and it has boards like this, right? There's pieces. If any one of those boards is broken, or a couple of them, the person's not going to be able to make it across. And worst of all, the whole bridge is going to break and it's going to collapse. That's why I want you to think about persuasion as a process, because most people think, well, I either got the person to say no or I got the person to say yes, and that's the end of it. They'll launch a sales funnel, they'll launch a webinar, they'll give a speech, and they say, well, nobody made sales. So all they think about is, nobody made it over here. Nobody made it over to the promised land. Nobody made it over here to the golden city. And they either stop what they're doing and they start all over again, or they just don't know what to fix. What a master persuasive person and a persuasive technician, I don't even know what to call myself these days, can do is can look at that bridge and find the exact step that broke and fix it, and the whole damn thing works, right? This is really important, because if your car stopped working tomorrow, you would take it you wouldn't replace the entire car. That'd be dumb. You'd take it to a mechanic, and maybe it'd only take a couple $100 to get it fixing again. But most people's sales process, their funnel, whatever it is, they don't know how to figure out which step in the process lost the person. And so they are totally clueless. They're either starting the whole process all over again, they're going to this new seminar and trying this person's framework, or they're trying to reverse engineer this person's funnel, and they're just rushing through it like buying a new car when the old one breaks down. What I want you to be able to do is understand persuasion as a process, so that when you don't get the end result you want, you don't go, well, I started here and I didn't get this end result. I want you to be able to zero in on the exact link in the chain, the exact moment when you lost a person, why you lost a person, and being able to fix and correct that instead of fixing the whole damn thing. This is when things get really exciting, because let's say you fix that step, right? Now the whole thing's kind of working. You're making sales, but you want to make more. Well, you don't just redo the whole thing. Then you start looking at little parts on the bridge, like this screw is loose, this rope is broken, this board is broken. My point is that troubleshooting the persuasion process, being able to zero in on the exact moment that you lost their, not their attention, I'll tell you what you actually lost in a second, that you lost them, that's how it's really done. The people who I've known, and for the past 30 years, I've probably helped a few dozen people hit the 7-figure mark. I just helped one of my students hit the 6-figure mark for the first year ever in her life last year, one of my new coaching students. I've helped probably hundreds of people get to the 6-figure mark. And it's not because I know some magical formula or magical funnel. It's because I know how to zero in on those parts in the person's persuasion process, whether they're speaking from stage, from a webinar, social media, I don't care. It's all the same. The process of persuasion is universal and it applies to all situations in life, any different type of media, any industry. And once you understand it, you become the person who can build something and who can fix it, fix the little loose screws, whatever, until the thing's working. And then you can pour money into it and make more money than you're spending. And then it's just a matter of how saturated your market is, right? You just crank the spending up, you keep making more money. And that is how people reach the 7 and 8 and 9-figure mark. Of course, as you're spending more money, the bridge might start to break a little bit, right? You're putting more people on it, you're putting more pressure on it. But knowing the process, understanding the process, you can zero in and say, okay, what's the thing that broke? Why did it break? What did Seth teach me? And you get the whole damn thing working again. So this is the way that I approach persuasive communication. It's not stacking tricks and hooks and try this video hook and try this manipulation technique and try this stupid NLP frame. It's none of that. The important thing is understanding that persuasion is a process, and listen very carefully. Anything that can be done well and can be effectively done can be systematized and broken down into a set of steps that you can drill every single day for 15 minutes a day. And by the end of 12 months, you can become such a master at it that not only can you improve your results, but you can actually help other people improve their results because, like I said, the process of persuasion is universal. Now, doesn't this sound more exciting than trying to reverse engineer this guru's funnel or that guru's funnel who's probably only making sales because of their reputation and their funnel would crash if it was in your business, right? That's funnel hacking. That's what a lot of people are wasting their time doing, that, or pulling a YouTube video here with this language technique or this NLP frame here and there, but they don't see how it all fits together. They don't even see that there is a bridge. And more importantly, when the person doesn't buy, they say what you should never say, and they say, I lost the person's attention. I lost their attention. I'm going to try AI and see if it'll actually talk back to me for a second. Now, there are more people on here, and I welcome my VA to the call. Maybe she can tell me this. AI, can you real quickly, hang on. AI, really quickly, just summarize the AIDA frame for our audience here. Please be brief and explain why each step matters. And I want to do this in context of telling people why it's dangerous to think that you lost the person's attention, because it's not always attention that you lost. And just give me a yes in the chat if you can hear this. Go ahead, AI. Don't be shy.
The AIDTA frame stands for attention, interest, desire, trust, action. Losing attention is just one failure mode. Often people are stuck because interest or trust wasn't baked. Each step matters because you can't create action if you're out of sync. So if you're hearing me, give that yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think my audience is a little shy this morning because no one told me if they can actually hear you or not. So I'll just have to keep guessing on that. But let me go back to this. Let's say you have a webinar funnel and you're 30 minutes into it, right? And people start dropping off, right? Most of us would say what happened is I lost their attention. Or maybe you put a sales page or a website out there and the person scrolls halfway down your page and they leave. Or maybe you're on a one-on-one sales call and you can just feel that intuitive nudge when the person has tuned out. All right, you ever felt that when you're on a call, you just felt like the person has tuned out and you think, well, I've lost their attention. The truth is you did not lose their attention. You lost something else. This is the thing you want to write down. If you're taking notes, this is the thing to write down right here. There are 5 steps in the persuasion process. You can think of these as phases on the bridge that we just talked about a moment ago, right? There are 5 steps. The first one is obviously attention. Now, anyone who's familiar with my work who happens to be on the live stream right now, I'm only looking on Instagram. There's probably a couple of other live streams. Thank you for telling me you can hear. Is AI too loud or too soft? Let me know. But how do you get a person's attention and make it stick, because you can get a person's attention the wrong way and you will almost guarantee to lose it, right? So there's a right way and a wrong way to grab people's attention. But that's the first thing. And some of you are thinking, well, Seth, this is really obvious. Wait until you hear what comes after this, okay? What's the best way? If the goal is to persuade a person, what is the best way to get their attention? Somebody tell me, who's familiar with my work already. What's the best way to get a person's attention? AI is too soft. Okay, we're going to have to figure that out later. This is just going to be me today. The best way to get a person's attention is to ask yourself this: what is the person's level of awareness about the thing that I'm persuading them of? What is their level of awareness about the thing that I'm persuading them above? I see there's a realtor on here, so I'm going to use well, I hope you're a realtor. It says realtor in your name. I'm going to use this as an example. Most of us only talk to people who are looking for our type of product or service. That is one of the biggest mistakes in marketing, because by the time they're looking for, like, I need a realtor, I need a life insurance policy, I need to buy a car, I need to hire a marketing coach, I need to blah, 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 whatever it is, your service category, your product category, whatever it is, I need a new journal, I need a time management system, whatever it is. By the time they get there, it's probably too late for you to get to know them for the first time and then to get them to say yes to you, because they've already probably had a referral. They've been reading someone else's material. There's somebody who has been in their head, in their cognitive space longer than you have. That's the first problem. The second problem is that is the most cluttered stage of awareness when it comes to persuasion. It's the most cluttered stage, because everybody else is looking for their business. Everybody else who has a service in the same category as yours is saying, buy my such and such, hire me for such and such, book a call for such and such. And they're tired of hearing it, right? Now, do you market to those people? Yeah, I'll talk about how to do that in just a second. But you're going to have other people who at some point in the future, right? This is gold right here. Listen to this. Some point in the future, they are going to realize that they need a service or product in your category. It's going to happen sometime within the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next year. The sooner that you get on that person's radar and start getting into their mind and becoming familiar and building the 4 dimensions of trust, which I'll talk about in a little bit, the easier it's going to be for you to, number one, get them to hire you, to buy your product, to buy your service, attend your webinar, whatever it is, when they finally do decide they need a product like yours. But they are going to have almost no price resistance. They're not going to haggle you for price. I learned this when I had a book out there. And by the way, if you have not written a book, I'm going to tell you right now why you need to do it. I have a book out there that's been out there for years, and people who read that book and contact me for the first time, I've never, ever heard them before. Some of those people end up spending thousands of dollars a week with me. The next week and the week before that, I had no idea who they were, but they said, I've been reading your book for years. Now, why did it take them years to decide they needed me? Because of their stage of awareness. I'll tell you about that in a second. But my point is that the sooner that you get into the person's head, the better chance you'll have of getting them to say yes, and to say yes at the price point that you really want. Now, I am not saying that cold traffic and paid advertising doesn't work. Quite the contrary. We're going to talk about that in a second. But there are stages of awareness that a person goes through. Stage 3 is when they say, I'm looking for a product or service like blank, and that is your category, right? The category you represent. Maybe you're a Facebook ads professional. Maybe you're a personal trainer. Maybe you're a massage therapist. I don't care what it is. Your service or your product has a category, right? And you don't want to be a commodity, right? If people only know your category, they're just going to be like, oh, well, it's just another chiropractor, it's just another light acupuncturist, just another blah, blah, blah. You can either be a commodity within the category, or you can be someone who's trusted as an authority. And the big question is, how soon did you actually get on their radar? You have to do it before they actually say, hey, you know what? I need to hire an acupuncturist. Hey, I need to hire a Facebook ad specialist. The sooner you get into their head, the better, right? So that's the third stage. You're probably thinking, well, what is the second and third stage? The first and second stage, sorry. I'm fumbling with my words a little bit this morning. It's a little embarrassing, but anyway, first, second stage. What's the second stage? The second stage is where They know that they have the problem that you solve, right? If you're talking about a realtor, this is like someone who knows that their house is, they're outgrowing their house, right? They're a family who's outgrowing their house. Now, they don't wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, we need to buy a new house. I think we're outgrowing our house. It's a slow, gradual process. Like their kids start fighting because they're in the same room. They've got too much stuff in the garage. Like there are symptoms the person starts experiencing, and they go, well, and maybe they're not thinking I need to hire a realtor. They're thinking, how do I organize my garage? How do I blank? Whatever goes in that blank is ways that they can adapt to living within the smaller home. And then the conversation is going to go from there to, um, you know, bigger homes in my area or three-bedroom homes in my area, but they may not be saying, I need a realtor, right? This is stage two. This is where they're trying to solve the problem, but they're not sold on the specific category of service that you belong to. Now, here's the big mistake a lot of people make. They'll go, they either won't talk to these people at all, which is a mistake because the earlier you get into their domain, their cognitive domain, the more trusted you're going to be by the time they actually say yes, that they do need you. So the sooner you get on, the better. There's actually one stage that's sooner than this. We'll talk about that in a second. But stage two is where the person is trying to solve the problem that your product or service solves, but they're looking at maybe doing it themselves, maybe hiring their uncle to do it, maybe looking at some YouTube videos, or maybe there's some other type of service or product that solves the problem. Maybe they're looking at remodeling their home instead of moving out of it. So you got to start thinking more broadly and thinking the people who are going to need my service at some point in the future, what are the alternative things that they're looking at in order to solve the problem? And I'm not talking about competitors, right? If you're a realtor, I'm not talking about them looking at other realtors. If you're an acupuncturist, I'm not talking about them looking at other acupuncturists. If you're a business coach, if you're a trauma-informed breathwork specialist, I'm not talking about them looking at other trauma-informed breathwork specialists. I'm talking about them looking at other things that solve the same problem but are not in the same product category as yours. Now, here's why that's important. You need a different type of funnel, a different message, a different application of the persuasion process, depending on which stage of awareness they're in. Some of you are thinking, God, this is really complicated. It is complicated. But let me tell you something. The keep it simple, stupid is there's a reason that ends in stupid. Okay. Keep it simple. It's simple is fine if you're baking a cake, changing a tire, doing something simple. But we're talking about if you want to really build a business that replaces your income, gets you to 7 or 8 figures a year, the solution is going to be complex. And I know that goes against what a lot of experts tell you, but the reason they're telling you their system is simple is so you'll buy it. That's it. It doesn't even work. They want you to buy it. Okay. The space shuttle is complicated. An automobile is complicated. An air conditioner system is complicated. AI is complicated. The internet is complicated. All of the best inventions that created the most profound impact on our life and created the most value were complicated for somebody to create. We experience them in a very simple manner because we didn't build them, but we don't know how to fix them. My point is that simple will get you to a certain level of success. At some level, you have to be able to understand the complexities of the things that you're doing. And that's why most people stay stuck, because they're still looking for a simple solution to a complex problem. Building a 7 or 8 figure business, that's a complex problem. You got a lot of hurdles to overcome. So that said, stage two is where they're looking for other products or services that will, or do it yourself options that will solve the same problem you solve. Okay. First stage, that was stage two. First stage, they're only aware of the symptoms, but they're not even looking for a solution. But the symptoms, listen very carefully, the symptoms are eventually going to snowball and they're going to hit a crisis in their life where they realize, I've got to do something about this. Okay. That's it. Stage one, they're experiencing the symptoms and the symptoms are starting to pick up momentum, but they're not even aware of what the actual problem is, right? They may have arthritis pain in their foot and they eventually are going to need a gut health specialist. But the pain is just really small and minor and it's not really disrupting their life very much. That's a stage one person. They're indifferent about the problem. They're not thinking, wow, I got gut health issues. I need to hire a gut health specialist. And so what do you think they're going to say when our ad says, gut health specialist, best in the world, 5-star reviews? They don't care. It's not because of trust. It's not because of how you're trying to grab their attention. It's none of that. It's that you don't really understand where they are in the stage of persuasion. Stage one is where they are experiencing the symptoms, but they themselves can't identify the problem and they may not even care because the symptoms, they're starting to get worse, but they don't realize how bad they're going to get in the future, right? And you can apply this to anything. This is really good for selling coaching services. Stage one, Stage two is where they're okay, I got a problem here. I'm going to look for a solution, but they're open to a bunch of different types of solutions. They're not saying your specific category. Stage three is where they're like, okay, I need to hire somebody like this. I need to buy this type of product. I need to attend this type of seminar. And it represents your category, your service or product category. But the problem then is you've got competitors who offer the quote unquote same thing and may offer for a lower price. Now, are you starting to see why at stage three, if your marketing only knows how to talk to those people, you are losing the opportunity to scale to 7 or 8 figures because you're trying to enter the marketplace by the time they're already familiar with somebody else. Someone else has already seduced them. Someone else has already referred. Someone else is already more familiar. And not only that, there's this big mass of other people marketing to that person, retargeting that person, emailing that person because they're actively looking for the solution. And now you're caught in the crowd. Now there's a way to penetrate that market too, but what I want you to understand is that if you want to just go ahead and keep making 60, $70,000 a year or struggling, don't listen to anything I have to say. You're probably okay. If that's as far as you want to go. But if you want to really build a business that can reward you with the type of lifestyle you really want, this is something you need to understand and embrace. And the only people who do this, some of them do it without even realizing they're doing it. Okay. But then this is very interesting. They're doing it without realizing they're doing it. But then when it stops working, they don't know how to fix it because they don't know what they were doing in the first place. That's how people sometimes build businesses that make a couple $1,000,000 one year, a couple years later, they're broke. I've seen that many times because they just lucked out, but they didn't understand the process we were talking about. So if you want to get someone to say yes, you got to understand first, what stage of awareness are they in? Are they experiencing the symptoms, but the symptoms are not bad enough yet for them to look for a solution? That's stage one. Stage two, are the symptoms bad enough that we're like, okay, I got to do something, but they're not quite, they may not have heard of my type of product or service. They may have biases against it. They may be sold on a different thing. In other words, if you're an acupuncturist, they may be thinking, well, I need a massage therapist, right? You can't go to those people and go, hey, here's why we're better than all the other acupuncturists. They're like, well, I don't need acupuncture. I'm looking for a massage therapist. You can still get that person as a client because they solve the same problem you do, but you're not going to do it talking to them as if they're a stage three. Stage three is where they're like, okay, I need an acupuncturist. I need a massage therapist. Whatever it is, they need your product or service category. I need to hire a realtor who specializes in this. And then the fourth stage is where they know who you are. They've seen your offer. They've almost said yes. Maybe they had a call with you and they said they had to think about it. Maybe they went all the way to your checkout page. They started the application. A stage four person, they like you and have decided they want to buy with you, but they haven't spent money yet. Now, are you starting to see why your marketing process, your persuasion process, you can't talk to all these people the same way? And that's probably the biggest mistake a lot of y'all are making right now. The majority of your audience is probably in one of these stages, and you're talking to them as if they're in a completely different stage, and that's why you're struggling right now. Or that's why you're stuck. Maybe you're making $300,000 or $400,000 a year, but you can't scale to millions. Maybe you got really good at marketing to one of these stages, but you don't know how to do it with the other ones. So when I say the persuasion process, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, we're not going to get to talk about the psychology today, but let me drop something on you that will be really helpful for everybody who's on this call. This is something you can take away and you can apply today. Okay. Stage 1, 2, 3, or 4. By the way, the stages I'm talking about are not the buyer's journey. That's a completely different thing. I think the buyer's journey is BS. It doesn't work. I've seen people test it. I think it's nonsense. I think HubSpot made that up off the top of their head and it's worthless. I'm talking about psychological stages of awareness. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, here's the secret. You know how there's a bunch of different ways to get a person to become a lead, to become a client? They're called sales funnels, right? You may have never heard the word sales funnel. Basically, what it means is that it turns a person from being a complete stranger to taking this step, that step, this step, that step, going to your website, filling out the lead form, going to the cart page, whatever it is. There's a series of steps that you take them through to get them from being someone who's never heard of you before to someone who's either subscribed to your newsletter, buying your product, attending your webinar. That little technology that you build is called a sales funnel. Okay. And there's different types of sales funnel. And if you own an online business or trying to figure out how do I get paid ads to work, or how do I get all my social media traffic to actually turn into buyers, you've probably heard this term sales funnel, and you have probably tested dozens of different things. You got a bunch of bozos screaming in your ear about how there's this proven system that'll work in any business. There's no such thing as that, by the way. or you're one funnel away from success and you're just trying to find that one funnel, you're doing it the wrong way if you're doing that. Here's what you need to know. First thing you need to know is which stage of awareness are most of your prospects, most of the strangers who have never heard of you, which stage are they most likely to be in? And then when you figure that out, then you know what type of funnel you need to use. This is the biggest mistake that I see that's blocking people from either building a business that, like, here's where some people are usually stuck. They're making no money and they want to go from making no money to making money. This is the thing that keeps a lot of them stuck. The people who are making a living, but they don't have anything to put in savings or invest back in their business, but they want to break that $100,000 a year mark. This is the thing that gets them stuck. And usually, yes, it's the same thing when a person's making a few $100,000 a year and they want to reach the 7, 8 figure a year mark. This is usually the thing keeping them stuck, is they don't understand which funnel applies to which stage of awareness. Here it goes. If they're in stage one and they're experiencing the symptoms of the problem, but they're just curious about, what do I do about this symptom? Like, what do I do about this pain in my arm? What do I do about, like, organizing my garage, whatever it is? In other words, they're looking for a solution, not to the problem you solve, but to one of the symptoms. That's when you use a live presentation, and this can be a webinar, a workshop, I don't care what you call it. It's a virtual presentation or an in-person presentation. The key component is it's live. If most of your people are experiencing the symptoms of your problem but don't understand the problem itself and are certainly not looking for any solutions yet, but you know they will be, and you know the symptoms are very quickly getting bad enough to where they're going to go, I got to do something about this. You want to get in early as possible, and you need to do that on a live one-to-many presentation, okay, like a webinar. Now, stage two, let's say they're looking for solutions. They're looking for solutions to the problem, but they're not sold on the type of solution, right? You're a coach, they're not sold on coaching. You're an acupuncturist, they're not sold on acupuncturist. You're a realtor, they're not sold on hiring a realtor, but they do have the problem they're outgrowing their house. They do have the problem that they got ED. They do have the problem that they're getting chronic headaches. They do have the problem that they got chronic shoulder pain. And they're looking at many different things, possibly a do-it-yourself option. They're looking for a solution. Those are the people who you go to a VSL, or a pre-recorded presentation that is usually 8 to 12 minutes in length, where they have the opportunity to fill out an application to get on a call booking with you or to buy a low ticket product. And eventually what you're going to do is you're going to upsell them to a high ticket product, get them into your coaching program from there. Or if you're selling something that's strictly transactional, that's where you want them to just apply for more information at that point. But you use a pre-recorded video presentation or audio presentation. That's how you sell a person who's looking at different options. And here's why. Your video presentation has to explain to them why all those other things that they're going to try are not going to work or are not going to get them the result the way they want it. And you don't want to spend one-on-one sales calls doing that. You don't want to struggle doing that on social media, because they're not going to listen to you long enough, right? You've got to do something that gets their attention, holds their attention, turns their attention into interest, their interest into desire, their desire into trust, and their trust into action. That's the psychological process of persuasion that I didn't get to talk about today, because we're talking about stages of awareness, which you need to know, right? A video can go attention, interest, desire, trust, action without giving them the option of skipping or scrolling down the page. That's why you need that. Stage three, if the person is looking for a product or service within your specific category. In other words, they know your type of product or service by name. They're looking for a dream journal. They're looking for what do you call it? A financial coach for retirement, right? There's a category you belong in. This is stage three. That type of person, you need either a low ticket product that they buy on what's called a self-liquidating funnel, or a low ticket funnel, something that's very easy for them to say yes to, something that's less than $100. The price can range from $7 and $97, but it should be less than $100, right? And this is usually something you present to them on what's called a long form sales page, a website that's got a lot of content on it that they can skip at their leisure, find the things they want. Don't make them sit on a video and educate them about all the stuff they already know. They know they want a product or service like yours. What you want to do is put something in front of them that gets them to say yes. And then if you're selling something for less than $100 and thinking, well, Seth, I can't make any money that way, you can make money by selling them the thing and on the next page giving them an option to either upgrade, customize it, get an extra thing where they interact with you and the sales opportunity comes, right? Or on the next page, you don't get them to interact with you at all. You just sell them, upsell them stuff, and you through email marketing and through the products that you deliver them themselves, you sell them more things. That's called a self-liquidating funnel or a low-ticket funnel. I talk about all this stuff in my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales, which I'll tell you how to get in just a second. Okay, but the point here is that if you use the wrong type, if your funnel is a mismatch to the stage of awareness that most of your clients are in, even if the funnel works really well for somebody else and it's well built and it's got great copy on it, you can do everything right. Your ads can be right, and you will burn time and you will burn money if you don't understand what I'm talking about right now. Okay. Now, the fourth type of funnel, if the person has already interacted with you in some way, they've almost said yes, they went all the way to your checkout page, maybe they filled out the first part of the form, and you should have tools that can measure this stuff. If you don't, I don't know why you don't. You need to have that, right? Or maybe they've had a sales call with you and they said, oh, let me think about it, or let me talk to my wife, whatever, at the end. This is a person who went all the way up to the door and knocked, and when you opened it, they go, I think I'll visit later, right? This is stage 4. This type of person, first of all, you better have their email, but you have a retargeting campaign that makes them an urgent and irresistible offer that features your guarantee, the testimonials that overcome their last minute objections, which we'll talk about another time. In other words, your messaging is going to change for these people. You don't send them back to the same old sales page, the same old webinar presentation, right? You don't do that. Stage 4 is people, like, for instance, let's say that you have a lower price, like you have one of those urgent buy in 30 days or where the price goes up offers. You want to tell them the story about why the price is so low and why it's going back up, because that's probably their last minute objection. Why is it so low? Can't I get it later? I'll just wait until I get it later. So you're matching your message to their stage of awareness. If you try to talk to all 4 of these people the same way, sure, you'll make some sales, but you're not going to build a stellar business doing it. So to recap, stage 1, they have the symptoms of the problem. The symptoms are starting to get bad and they're looking for it. They don't like the symptoms and would rather not have them, but they're not actively looking for a solution. They need to be educated on how those symptoms are eventually going to lead to a crisis where they have to do something. You need a live presentation, one-to-many for that. Stage 2, they're aware that the symptoms are bad. They're looking for solutions, but they're not sold on your type of solution. That's where you do the video sales letter, right? The video presentation that takes them there and they listen to the whole thing and they buy something at the end, right? Because what you're doing there is you're captivating their attention. The reason you don't use a sales page or a website for people who are in stage 2 is because they can whip through it really quickly, and whatever assumption or misconception they have in their head, they're going to be looking at your website with that misconception. You have to break that down. You have to hold their attention long enough to do that. We'll talk about how to do that later, but prolonging the sales process, getting them to pay attention to the presentation for a longer period of time instead of whipping right to the buy option, that's the key for stage 2 people. Stage 3, you go ahead and give them the opportunity to skip around on the page, whatever it is. You make a low ticket offer, less than $100, get them to buy it, and then the next is an upsell to an interaction with you or to more products and services that help them solve their problem faster, customized, whatever. That's stage 3. Stage 4 is retargeting, where you tell them a story about why your guarantee is what it is, why your price is what it is, why your offer is expiring, right? Or maybe you overcome their last minute objection, which is, by the way, their last minute objection is never about your product or service, and it's always about them. It's always about their insecurity. Is it really going to work for me? They believe it works for everybody else. They don't believe it's going to work for them. So that page needs to feature that, right? Those are the 4 stages. What you need to do, and I'll give you all a shortcut. If you go to Amazon and you buy my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System, yes, I do have a book. It's very long, but I'll tell you this. I had somebody, it's a long book. It's complicated. There's a lot of great stuff in there. But the first guy one of the first people who read this, never coached with me, never got on a coaching call, never got into my group coaching. I talked to him about 18 months later. He had read my book 3 times. He had applied everything in it. He grew his business from $500,000 a year to $8 million a year. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what industry he's in because you're going to get distracted by that. This will work in any industry. I could tell you story after story after story in industries you probably never even heard of where this works. So what you can do is you can go and there's 2 ways you can move forward from here. If you're thinking, wow, this really sounds like something I could use some help with. You can go to Amazon and buy my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. I'll see if I can find the chat and put it in here somewhere. Boom, here's the chat. There's a link to my book on Amazon, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. All right, you can buy that book and you can figure all this out on your own. It has all the answers in there. I promise you, if you're smart and you're diligent and you go through it and you have years to spend on it, you can get this, right? What you can do is take the chapters of that book. If you're having a hard time understanding these concepts, take the chapters of that book to your favorite AI and say, read this chapter and teach me. Now tell me how it's going to apply to my business. I run this type of business, blah, 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 whatever. And pay specific attention to chapter 3, where it talks about stages of awareness and the funnels. And it will tell you, unless the AI is totally off base, which sometimes it does. Sometimes it goes off the rails and ignores what you give it. But it should give you the right type of sales funnel for your business. And then you know what to build. And then you're not guessing. The next step, of course, is being able to troubleshoot the funnel and figure out what part of it's working, what part of it's not. That's what we started out talking about. That's the first thing you can do. You can do all this on your own. It's going to take you a lot of time to do it. I can give you all the resources to do it. Second option, if you already have a business that's making money and you want to make more, like maybe you want to break the $100,000 a year mark, I have a group coaching program. What I want you to do, I'm not going to make it easy for you to contact me, and I'll tell you why in a second. What I want you to do is find me on social media and send me a message and tell me what you got out of this podcast and tell me how you're hoping I can help you. Now, listen, this is only if you're making money with your business. If you're not making anything and you're like, Seth, I'm just totally lost on what type of business to start, I've actually got something for you too. Okay. But if you're making money and you've got some money to invest a couple $100 a month into group coaching where you can actually learn and be held accountable along with the other people who are in my program, send me a message on social media. I'll have my VA and get in touch with you. She'll tell you about how the group coaching works and I'll get you in. That is the first step. Now, if you're thinking, Seth, I'm already making a few $100,000 a year or maybe even a few million a year, I'd like to see how I can get to that next level. We need to work one-on-one. And the first step to that is actually getting into my group coaching too. The reason I do that is because I want to know that like we kind of get along and you're not like somebody who I just can't work with. So getting into the group coaching would still be the first step if you want to do this one-on-one. But let's recap. Persuasion is a process. Okay. We couldn't talk to AI today. I'm kind of sad about that, but I got to get my audio working. Persuasion is a process. It's a step-by-step process, and you can lose a person's attention at one stage. At another stage, you can lose their interest. Sometimes when they drop off, it's because they lost desire for what you have or never had it in the first place, or you lost their trust or never earned it, or you got attention, interest, desire, trust, action, and they just did not know what the hell to do at the end. And that is more common than you think. I've seen a lot of people who build funnels that would maybe make a ton of sales, and at the end, the person is bloody confused about what they're supposed to do to get started. And even if you think it's very, very clear, I promise you it's not. Attention, interest, desire, trust, action. It's not about getting and holding attention. You can hold attention all the way to the end and get the person to say, that was really interesting. I got to think about it. Or I'll buy it next May, or when my dog is like dead or whatever, or when I finish paying off this house, or when I get rid of this hangnail, whatever it is. If person says that at the end, yeah, maybe you held their attention, but the key to persuasion is to turn attention into interest, interest into desire, desire into trust, trust into action. If you're thinking, Seth, those sound like abstract theories, how do I apply that in my business? Well, we didn't have time to talk about that today, and it's actually a process I want to educate you on. So here's what you can do next. If you're just thinking, Seth, I don't want to buy anything, I don't want to get your book, I don't want to get coaching, I'm just like a cheap freebie seeker. I just want to get as much free information as I'm just kidding. I didn't really mean that. If you want to get as much information as you can about how I work and like what my techniques are and just kind of like get in my orbit and get familiar with how I teach, I'm going to give you a link to my YouTube channel, and I just want you to go there and subscribe, because I put up videos like this all the time. I put up like 3 or 4 of them a day. And I promise you that after listening to what I have to say for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, light bulbs are going to start going off, and it's going to change the way you think about persuasive communication. Okay. So that's going to be it for today. I'm going to hopefully get AI working by tomorrow. I'll talk to my VA about that. But if anyone has a quick question, please DM it to me. And so, by the way, one-on-one coaching, I only work with people who are making a certain income level now. My schedule is just too full. So if you don't have money to spend or you're not quite ready to do it, please don't. Let's not waste each other's time by getting on one-on-one calls or anything like that. I'm not trying to be rude. It's just you got to start where you are. I want to help you from where you are right now. If you're stuck right now, maybe you don't even have the money to invest in coaching. go to my YouTube channel and start listening, but start immersing yourself in this. A couple years down the road, when you start actually getting some traction, we'll probably gonna end up talking sometime. Okay, that's going to be it for today. Everybody have a great day. Make sure that if you got something out of this, to like, share, subscribe, and follow me on social media, and I'll see you the next time.